Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Ven, ven, alégrate hoy. Ven, ven, alégrate hoy. Today un día muy feliz. Ven, ven, alégrate hoy. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Don't be afraid and come in. No tengas miedo a cambiar. No tengas miedo al cambiar. Es hoy un día muy feliz. Ven, ven, alégrate hoy. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Thank you, Marshall.
Yay, Marshall. Buenos, what? Let me wait for. Go. Good morning.
We've got to wait till 12:30.
Oh, we have to wait till
people
12:30.
joining us online.
Oh, that's right. Okay. We'll wait for a few minutes. None of the jokes that I know can be told at church without me igniting my shorts on fire. So, Can we do you guys want to do the song again?
Any requests?
Any requests? Anybody know? Do you know Melancholy Baby? Come to me, my melancholy baby. I do happen to know it.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Okay. We just got a request for the UU Freebird. Yeah, this will take some time. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat. Oh, if memory serves, it's number 1064. Is that right? Yeah. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea. In wonder, casting questions into the deep, shifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. Give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. Universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my Nice singing. Good choice, Chris.
Thank you, Marshall. Gracias, Marshall. Otra. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a esta reunión especial de medio año para la Iglesia Unitaria Universalista, la primera Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de San Diego. Gracias por asistir a los que están aquí en persona y también los que están en línea. Yo me llamo Everardo Aguilar, mi pronombre es él, y es mi privilegio de servir a ustedes como el presidente de la Junta Directiva de esta iglesia. Good afternoon, and welcome to this special meeting, mid-year meeting for the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego. Thank you to everyone attending here in person and also online. My name is Everardo Aguilar. My pronouns are he and him. It is my privilege to serve as president of your church board of trustees. Although we have a lot of information to share, communication today will not be one way. There will be plenty of opportunity for discussion and sharing of your thoughts for the future of our church. We just completed our year-long celebration of our church's 150th anniversary and the quinceañera of our South Bay campus. We have a great deal to celebrate, and now we can all look forward to planning the future of our church. I'm looking forward to a lively discussion and visions for our future today. Welcome and thank you for being here. And now, to commemorate the light of a brighter tomorrow, we will now light our chalice.
Do the board goals?
It's me again. I now officially call this mid-year meeting to order. So first item of business is I'm going to briefly review our 2023-2024 board goals. These are the goals that we've been working on as a board throughout the year. We'd also going to be sharing some of our progress for that. And it should be down there. Okay. So the first one is meeting our fiduciary responsibilities to ensure sound financial policies and practices are followed. In fact, one of the constitutional amendment that we're going to be discussing is directly related to that first goal. Work with ministers and staff to address and resolve the question of stay or go, visioning our future. And we have some different possibilities with that. The third one is to communicate clearly about our church finances. And I'm not going to read all the sub-paragraphs, but basically what they describe is we try to increase visibility and making sure that people are informed with what's going on with the church finances. And hold on to what unites us with love at the center. As we say at the opening words of every service, may love be the spirit of this church. And I think we really mean that. And we are, but sometimes there's, whenever you have any group of people, sometimes there might be difficulties, but we can work through those difficulties if we act out of love. Support outreach and partnership by showing up and offering financial support. We do that with our offerings, but also we show up physically a lot when other communities need help, like the communities that are suffering from the flooding that happened last week, among other things. And the pantry is also another way we do that. So those are the goals that the board had set out for this year, and the ones that we are working, and this is what we're working on throughout the year. as we, and every time we meet, we check in to see how we're progressing along with those goals. So, thank you.
And now we are going to hear a brief update from our Right Relations team. You're first, right? Why don't you all come up?
Everybody go.
Hello, I'm Marla English. My pronouns are her and she. I'm a member of your Right Relations Committee, and I'm talking today a little bit about who we are and what we're doing and what our goals are. Your Right Relations team is a group of lay members who are a resource to help all congregants create better relationships and restorative practices. Our current team members are Tony Brumfeld, myself, Bill James, Naomi Lake, Daniel Paul, and Reverend Justine. You know, Dan's mother said something that I thought was good, and we spoke about it at one of our earliest meetings. She said, I don't know where this came from, but she said, start where you are, bring what you have, do what you can, and think about the possible. And I think that that's what our committee is really wanting to do. We have some goals that we want the congregation to support us with, and this is not something that this committee wants to do sort of to you or even for you. This is something that we want you to be doing and have ownership of, and really to empower us to do what is important for the congregation. Our goals are as follows. Create a vision of how we want to be with one another, practice and model faithful communication. We want to do it among ourselves, and we want to help you learn to do it. And as part of that, we're trying to find or create really good training materials about how to communicate. We also want to revise and rewrite some of the conflict resolution guidelines and procedures that we have. And we want to understand conflict. We want to promote new ways to navigate conflict. We want to be better when we witness harmful or difficult behavior between congregants. What we really want to do is to make progress on continuing the work of being fully welcoming as a congregation and intentionally anti-racist. Today, we will talk about a few things, and each of our members are going to have a part. We'll talk about our goals, that's been my part, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished thus far, where we're going as a committee, and then we're going to ask for any questions you may have about our work. So that's what we're doing, and we really, really appreciate you being here and thinking about this work with us.
Hello, everybody. My part of this is to talk about what we've accomplished. And when we all got together, I don't know how many months ago now, we set out to decide what it was that we wanted to address in terms of conflict resolution and just being better at being in community with one another. And so one of the things that we did right away was to set up a web page, so we have a place where we can send people to, or people can come to see what it is we're doing. I'm sorry. We set up a web page so that we could communicate and have a place where people can come to see what we're doing, what our goals are, what we're working on, and also what we need from the community in terms of feedback. And so we've published articles in First Words. I don't know how many of you have read those, and we'll continue to do that as a way of being transparent, but also about being able to let you know what what's on deck, what we're working on, and again, if there's anything that we need from the community. And we surveyed the congregation because we decided you got to start somewhere. We have to know what a baseline is because we wanted this to be a measurable thing. We want to know if this is having an impact and that it's meeting the needs of the congregation. And the only way to do that is to ask you. And so we sent out a survey to establish a baseline. And some of the things that we found out from that survey were that the majority of respondents believe that conflicts are natural in a church community, and that all of us as congregants have a role to play in contributing to the good relations with each other. That was encouraging. You also believe that more often than not, both congregants and leaders have not always navigated conflict well, and do not feel the necessary, you also don't feel that you have the necessary skills to address conflict as well as you think is necessary. So that's a marching order for us in terms of figuring out how do we resolve that and give us all of us the skills that we need to be able to be in better community with each other. And then the respondents were pretty evenly divided on whether or not you understood the vision and direction of the Right Relations team, and that we currently have good relations amongst congregants at First UU. And so the conclusion is that the goals of the Right Relations team are indeed aligned with what is needed to foment good relations amongst the First UU congregation. And I put up on the slide the address to our website, but the easiest way to find it is when you're on the church website, go to Connections, Right Relations, and you'll find us. And now I think it is Bill who's going to address us.
So this will be a little bit of a recap. Marla told you a little bit about where we're headed, but just to outline our next steps, we're going to be taking a look at our covenant of right relations and our conflict resolution guidelines. We're going to work with the staff and ministers to promote some learning opportunities for all of us to participate in case there's skill building that we can bring to the church to promote that transformative conflict that Teresa talks about. We're going to continue to publish in the window and First Words to promote transparency, what we're thinking about, what we think might help our congregation move forward in that spiral around some of the same things that we come back to, but hopefully we grow as we do that. We'll continue to collaborate with the Board of Trustees and the Journey Toward Wholeness team for places of overlap and synergy and mutually supportive goals and activities. And then we're also going to continue to do some activities to track progress through surveys and see if we've moved the needle on where we've been and where we need to go. So, thank you. And I think you've got questions and comments?
No, I think Tony's good.
Okay.
I just wanted to say a word or two about why I wanted to be on this team. One of the most contentious issues we face as a congregation is our anti-racism work. In my view, anti-racism work is all about building healthy relationships and building a shared understanding as much as possible. In doing that work, there can be great accomplishments and long-lasting friendships, but there can also be misunderstandings, poor judgments, violations of trust, and hurt feelings. For me, a setback is not a time to turn back or walk away. We must remember that white allies and people of color are not a monolith. We need one another to make progress, but we may not think alike. We do not have the same experience or understanding of racism or agree on what to do about it. Even though making progress can be slow, this congregation has been my home for 35 years. I have worked with white people and people of color in Unitarian Universalism for much of that time, working to create more inclusive and welcoming congregations. I will remain at the table and do the work with you. Together, we can make our spiritual community and the world a better place.
So now we'd open for taking questions, but I also, before we do that, I want to let everybody know that if you go to our webpage, at the bottom of the page, there's a feedback form, and you can click on that, and it'll take you through a process if you want to send us any questions, concerns, or even or comments that you have about our work. We all get them in our email, so we can field them, and then when we get together when we meet, we can discuss those, and then always get back to you with clarifications, answers, or it gives us information that takes us on to a different part of this work that we didn't think about. So it's always important to hear from you, because this is for us. It's not just us giving to you. This is a two-way street.
So we have a very full agenda, so I would open the floor for maybe one or two questions that you feel that everybody needs to hear right now. And if it's something that's a little more individual, then you can certainly follow up with the team by email, but yes.
So I guess in general, let's say that you realize that a conflict has arisen in one of the church groups. What is the process for trying to get that resolved?
So I can jump in here. So the current process that's actually outlined, but that we probably have not, according to our survey anyway, all been that aware of, is first you try to deal with it individually with the person one-on-one in the group where it's happened. And if you find that you can't do that, then you can reach out for help. Now the members of this team may be available to give help, but certainly one of the ministers, Reverend Kristen or I, would be available, and we do this, right? So start in the smallest way possible. Talking to each other and with each other, not about each other. But if you need help talking with each other, ask for help. So that's our process that we want to get better at using. Is there someone else you want to respond to that, Dan? Or?
I just wanted to point out also, we do have a conflict resolution guideline, and if you go to our webpage, there's a link to it. So you can always review that, because it does lay out what Justine just said. And so it is something we are going to look at, because it does need to have some updating made. The language is a little bit old and then sometimes not very sensitive, but we will work on that.
Is there one more question that we feel everyone needs to hear now, or should we move on to our next item? Okay, hearing, I'm going to say we should move on. Cora, thank you for that.
One more comment.
Yes.
The only thing I would add, though, is that if you're noticing that the conflict is bubbling up, say, oh boy, here's a chance to do something different and transformative, rather than like, oh, I'm gonna just...
Yes.
I love Tony's words.
Yes. Wonderful.
I love Tony's words. It's not a time to walk away.
Right, and stay at the table. So speaking of which, we're going to stay at the table here and move on to our next item. We could talk about any of these things at great length, and we will, but today is kind of an overview. Thank you, Right Relationship team. I have to be careful to make sure the pages are in the right order. And why I'm doing this with my left hand. It's supposed to be good for your brain, right? To do things with your non-dominant hand. Here we go. So this is a chance for us to kind of check in about how things are going. You hired me a year and a half ago to come and take on 3 to 7 developmental goals. We have 8. But they're really, the main goal is rebuilding trust, right? Wouldn't you say? And that's what we're working on. But today we're going to talk about the part of the work that you've all been engaged in around visioning our future. Where are we headed? In early 2019, just to recap, the University of California expressed interest in purchasing our campus and they offered at that time $36 million. Interestingly, I have said this before, y'all didn't just jump at it, right, and say, give us the money. We do what we do. We formed a committee to investigate the question of whether to sell our Hillcrest campus and relocate or stay in place. We formed teams to consider possibilities, and then the work was put on hold because of the pandemic and because of a lot of other transitions that were going on. It is now time to take this up again, right? I've been hearing that from you. We've got to decide, are we staying, are we going? How do we know what we're doing? So the question that I care most deeply about, and that I think your leaders care most deeply about, is how shall we decide? So we're going to spend some time talking about that now. Would you like the handheld or?
So we're going to take you all through a participatory exercise this afternoon. Oh, I see some faces already. Right, the hope is that together we can do this work. But this is from the book Transforming Conflict. There is a model for engaging when you're in a polarity. And so stay or go, right? When I worked with the staff and we talked about where do we see polarities in the congregation, everyone was like, stay or go, right? So we have these two separate sides. So I'm going to walk us through an exercise today to explore stay or go in a deeper way and then see what emerges from there. So I'm going to put this down for a second. I'm going to bring our board over. Let me give you this.
Reverend Kristen is a wizard with flip charts and writing things down while talking. Would you like the microphone close to you, or? Okay. It's like watching Bob Ross, you know, the painter.
So the way that this exercise works, we put this up here because I wanted to make sure everyone can see it, is that you create 4 quadrants. You define the polarity, right? So in this case, the polarity is staying here or going, right? So this is built on the premise that there's only 2 possibilities. The possibilities are staying or going. And what we're going to do is that collectively we're going to go into each quadrant and see if we can get into the headspace of that quadrant. So in this quadrant, we're going to ask you to think about what is every possible good reason for us to stay where we are. We're going to explore that together. And then when we think we've named most of those things, we're going to try to get collectively into the headspace of what are all the reasons we should not stay. We're going to name as many of them as we can. We're then going to go to collectively, all of us getting in the headspace of if we were to argue for why we should go, to get us to name all of those things, and then we're going to get in the headspace of why shouldn't we go? So one thing to know is we wanted to be participatory, but we also wanted to keep it kind of fast moving. So one of the things with this exercise is you're not going to argue with anything that anyone says. We're not going to, I know we love to argue. But the whole point is actually for all of us to try to get into the space of thinking about this as completely as we can. So I want to take you to take a moment and to think about what are the reasons why we should stay? What matters most to you about the possibility of staying? Take a moment to think about that. Turn to a neighbor. Tell them one reason you think that we should stay. Okay, I hope you know I said this was gonna be quick, so there's your one. So now Tony is gonna come around with a microphone, and Justine's gonna come around with a microphone. And a reminder, all we're doing is naming things. We're not gonna respond to them. I'm gonna make a list. Why should we stay?
All right, why should we stay?
The ashes in the canyon.
Oh, yeah.
Ashes in the canyon.
Beautiful campus.
Our campus, there we go, okay, she got it.
Okay. Good, you can say it again.
It's a beautiful campus. We're in a beautiful place.
Beautiful place.
It's been people's home for a long time.
It's been our home for a long time. The tree.
When the new hospital is built, there is going to be an off-ramp down on 8, bringing people up to the hospital, right next to the hospital, right up to us. We won't be stuck in Hillcrest anymore.
So increased accessibility.
I was saying location. It's just such a great location.
Great location.
The window is a sentimental reason.
People know where we are.
People
The
know where we
memorial
are.
wall cannot be moved.
I'd say our history is one.
The memorial wall cannot be moved.
So many memories.
When the hospital project is completed, that parking structure is going to be gone, and we're going to have a beautiful view.
There are going to be so many new residents moving into the area that will be new church members.
The tree.
Okay, so we're never going to name all the things, but we want to be collectively sourcing that. So now, shift gears and imagine you're trying to convince someone about why we shouldn't stay. So think about for a moment all the reasons why shouldn't we stay. And then we're going to turn to our neighbors for a minute, and then we'll get to Yeah, take a moment, turn to your neighbors, share one reason why we shouldn't stay. All right, we're going to keep it moving it quickly. So we're going to list up on the board, invite you to keep getting to the essence, share something short. Why shouldn't we stay?
Not visible to the community.
Maintenance affordability. $36 million.
We are very hard to find.
Move to an area with more children, younger people.
We're walled in, gated out, and we're hostile to people coming up because it's scary to come in here if you don't know us.
We could serve a more diverse population.
We don't use the space well.
The facilities are kind of dated and don't meet current technology needs.
Space is limited, so the facilities don't serve our youth and children well.
Does that feel like enough for? Oh, Bella.
There's little room to grow.
Inconvenient transit access. We should be near a trolley line.
We could turn this campus into an income-producing asset that would support a congregation that was resident elsewhere.
There will be too much traffic here once they build the intern housing.
We can't afford it.
The preschool might lose their home.
So, we're shifting gears. Want you to take a moment and think about what are all the reasons we should go? Yeah, the reasons we should go. If you were going to convince someone, this is why we should go. Take a moment to think about that. Maybe turn to a neighbor and share one idea, one thought. All right, we're going to start calling those off, so raise your hand if you'd like to share something.
We don't serve any diversity here except the gay community.
Financial security.
Better design.
We're on stolen land, and we need to consider some reparations by going.
Better designed facilities, but we got to make sure we can take our organ with us.
Yes, yes, yes. When you start fresh, we'll have like room to dream big and to realize big dreams.
The devil we know is easier maybe to deal with than the one we don't. The devil we know is easier to deal with than the one we don't.
Relocating to a more inviting and diverse neighborhood.
So relocating to a more diverse and inviting neighborhood.
To live up to our mission and values better and differently than we do now.
We could have a much larger parking lot.
Put up a parking lot. Never miss an opportunity to sing that song.
We could build a building that had all the technology and design needs that we actually wanted.
All right, I hear us coming to a close. The only thing I didn't hear there was like $36 million, so I'm going to put that. Okay, so shifting gears one last time. Think about all the reasons we shouldn't go. If you were going to convince someone why we should not leave, why we shouldn't go, take a moment to think to yourself. If you would like to talk to someone close by, share an idea with them. All right, and now I'm...
Push and hold the button.
Wonderful. So we're going to start making our list. So if you have something to add, raise your hand.
Finding a new location has not been very hopeful.
Gorgeous campus here.
The new location may be too far away for me.
Well, 36 million may sound like a lot of money, but this is San Diego.
A studio for $36 million.
The transition could be difficult and long, and we may lose people.
We can't replace the land and the building for $36 million.
We could lose parking lot income.
We hate change.
Moving to a diverse neighborhood doesn't guarantee a diverse congregation.
That's right. Again, history and memories.
Okay. 50 years ago, 50 years from now, if we're still here on this planet, this church could be a designated historical site, like some of the churches up in upper state New York that I saw recently. We don't have the energy to start from scratch.
Your mind's similar. It just seems like so much work.
It will shift the focus of the congregation from justice, spiritual development, and community to logistical things like location and building.
We shouldn't move away from our memorial wall and the ashes.
All right, has everything that needs to, at least for today, to be named, been named? Okay, so one of the things around a polarity exercise is one, it kind of puts it all out there, right? It puts it all in one place. The hope is that it also maybe gives you a little bit of compassion for someone who might be on an opposite side of the polarity. So maybe you came in here and you thought, oh, I really want us to stay. But maybe it gives you some perspective of why someone might want to think it was important for us to go. One of the other things I want to ask us to is that part of the idea of this exercise is also to see what are the through lines between these that tell us about what we really value as a community. So I'm going to draw, in the center, you draw a kind of infinity symbol, which I'm going to do. So we want to think about, you probably can't read my writing, but think about all the things that you heard and think about what does that tell us about what we value as an institution, as a church. And we're going to come around and ask people to share some things about what we value.
So as you think about the things that have been offered here, what have you heard that really speaks to what we value?
There's kind of some polarities, but one is valuing the past and history.
One value I heard repeatedly was the opportunity to use this to become more diverse, to reach out to more people, and to grow the congregation throughout all the plus and minuses.
Are we going to speak to whether it's only stay or go, or is there an opportunity somewhere in the middle?
We're going to talk about that actually after this. But right now what we're focused on is about values. So what did you hear that we really think is so important?
Most of what I see in stay seems to have to do with the past. Most of what I see in go is addressing the future. Maintaining this property.
And someone home watching our live stream says, we have so much history right here where we are.
The memorial wall keeps coming up. And I think it is important, but it is movable. It all, all the little plaques come apart and the background can be easily reconstructed. It's just money to move it. It can go with us wherever we go.
So grateful. I want to make sure we stay away from trying to convince each other either way, stay or go. What we're trying to name is what were key themes, values, things that were important that were kind of collectively named across the areas.
I heard a lot of comments about a vision for a new, a better, a different, a more technologically advanced space.
And actually, in Carolyn's comment, I hear that we run the risk of, kind of bumping into polarities even as we talk about what we value. So, for example, the memorial wall kind of built into that is the idea that it can't move. And actually, that's maybe just a technical problem to solve. So I hear you. I just wanted to echo that. Yep.
We value aesthetics.
Beauty.
I think that, is this on? I think we value sacred spaces. This is more about more than history. It's a sacred space.
That our church is a platform for social justice and connection with communities.
I think we value our sustainability and financial viability.
I think you care about the cohesion of the congregation. We care about the cohesion, and to cause a split over this whole project would be treacherous.
So relationships, we value relationships. And then we're going to hand it to this.
Our church is more than just a building.
I think there's a limited amount of energy, and I think a move is going to take a lot of energy because it takes away from other programs that we so value.
So we value staying focused on our mission.
I feel like I missed one. So there was one about relationships, and then there was one about limited energy. Did I miss something in between?
Our church is more than a building.
More than a building. Thank you so much.
Diversity.
So there's a lot at stake. One more?
Accessibility. Great. So one thing I also just wanted to say is that, part of why we did this exercise, one, is to get us to put everything out there, to be able to hear from each other, but then also to really try to name what are the central values, because we want to be guided by this, right? We want to be guided by the things that are most important to the community, by those central values. That's a way we move forward together. And I'm going to turn it over to Justine to talk about what some of those ways might be.
So Susan kind of tipped a little bit to the future, but we've been talking about this polarity quite a bit in our staff team and with the board. And actually it was Tony who came up with the idea. He said, this is a little bit out there, but we've been talking about stay or go. Is there the possibility of sharing the space with the hospital? That's what I said. So Robbie and Tony and I reached out to the manager in charge of all the real estate and all the properties of the university system, and we met with him, and we, with some trepidation, said, what about sharing? And he said, that's an interesting idea. So we do have a third possibility to consider. There's stay and, try to make our way on our own. There's go and take the money and find another place. There is a third way possible where we would basically sell the campus and the hospital, the university, would build us a church to our specifications that would be, have all those advantages that we've talked about. So here in this space. So I just want to put that out there and just let you sit with that. In fact, why don't we just breathe for 30 seconds and then turn to your neighbor and just react to that, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. Well,
So when you can come back kind of to your center, let's hear from you. What are your responses to this third way as a possibility?
What would the hospital want of us?
So that's one of the questions. So I will say that there will be many more questions that we can answer, and in a way that's by design. One of the things that I have heard from you in my 18 months here is that we as a congregation want more information, and we want it soon. So we could have gone off and planned a whole bunch of stuff and given you a thorough presentation, and there'd be advantages to that. But we really want to get your take on this before we pursue that, and we want this to be a grassroots involvement. So what does the hospital want from us? They would basically want the campus, and they would work with us to figure out what our requirements are, and it would be a negotiation, much as it would be, to buy something.
I'd just say, I think it's important to know too, is that we would still get the money, right? So they would give us 36 million or whatever that is with inflation. And then we would pay them back whatever it would cost to build what we build, and we would get whatever is left over to invest in ways that create sustainability for us.
One thing that dawns on me is the campus was really built up and expanded at a point when we had our peak membership. And we may not need all the facilities on this property. And it may be that there are certain areas that we could easily give up.
Christy, could I trade places with you? Because you are so good at capturing what people say.
so a question is, what would they want from us? And one of the considerations is that we don't need all the space that we currently occupy, and that's one of the maybe reasons why this might be attractive.
I could see that if we could use their underground parking, which seems to be going to be massive, that we would then have our parking lot land as more usable space to have them design us a facility that did have more classrooms, technology, children and youth places, build up in the canyon so we have level space and can have many things.
I think it would be something that we might be able to make all of ourselves feel better about being on Kumeyaay land, number one. And I would prefer to have good public transportation up here, so we don't need the cars.
Okay, are they going to charge us rent for being on their land?
So we're just going to capture questions now. But I will say in general, many of the answers to these questions will be, that's all negotiable.
I would want some assurance that there's a worship space and that tree is maintained.
The tree was a topic at lunch, just so you know. Our lunch meeting.
My word for this is intriguing, and I'm thinking about St. Paul's Episcopal Cathedral in Bankers Hill that sold off their land. That was not the church itself, but sold off the land and was part of a deal with a high-rise developer.
Do you want to speak to that at all, Tony?
Me? That was sort of the model that came to my mind, and also thinking about when I visit my mom in Baltimore, every new condo complex has the first 2 floors or a mall or something else that's not residential. And for me, the thought of having office space and a young adult space and a youth space that has 4 floors of young, academically minded families living right upstairs is spectacular in terms of growth and sustainability.
Perhaps Tony just kind of addressed this, but there are so many ways this could, are we talking about the hospital building buildings on the space that we're not using? Are we talking about them building the whole campus and we're it's just, there's no details, so it's kind of hard to say anything.
I would be concerned about effectively putting ourselves into the position of being an afterthought in the UCSD hospital systems operations. That we're not going to be their top priority.
This is only a question. What about the school? Does it fend for itself, or do we have any? Yeah, the nursery school, the preschool.
So my question is, would we then be renting the building from the university, which if so, that brings up the question of their ability to evict us at some point or not renew the lease? You know, longevity, long-term, you know, what's the financial situation?
So as we look at a third way, if that could also, instead of our selling the property, we maintain ownership of the property, but negotiate other ways in which the rest of the property could be used with them. That way there wouldn't be the possibility of our ending up being let go from this site.
I think something I would like to think could be possibility would be to consider leasing the land here to the university instead of selling it to them. That way, then, they would have to always come back to us and would always have to negotiate. But if we sell it to them, we lose complete control of it.
Perhaps we could do a joint project. One of the things we've been talking about in terms of moving is having a space where we could build senior housing, and particularly for some of our seniors who would like to live close to church. Maybe there's a way that we could work with the university and have a kind of shared housing that's rented out where we get some of the proceeds and they get some of the proceeds.
And we've also, we're also, I think we're really talking about staying when we're talking about sharing. So, but I think that there may be other investors that we could look at that would be willing to build a 5-story apartment building on some of the land that we might see as available. But besides the hospital, I don't think the hospital is our only customer.
I was thinking on the same lines of what would it look like if there was a negotiation of us using the parking lot that's already here from the university, and that we would then look at the parking lot here to build something of residential in which we would become, I guess, the landlords of.
I just wonder if there might be a church-state issue, because the state of California, this is our, would they want to be collaborating with a denominational, religious organization?
Lots of important questions coming up. Can you?
I've been thinking about this disclaimer. So as a board member, I've been knowing this for the past 10 days. So I've been thinking it through and through and through. Like I've been thinking it at night. And what comes up for me is like, if we are considering a developer, we should be widening, because for my experience of UCSD, I don't think I will trust them as much. I don't think they trust themselves, to be honest with you. Like things change dramatically over time, like day by day. So gotta be very careful with them.
I think for me what this brings up is I haven't thought about it before. So and I understand we're people who want the answers to questions that we're not going to get right now. So really the issue to me is it's about staying, therefore, and exploring this third way, which I think is very exciting, and that would answer the questions. I mean, I don't want to talk about particulars because they're all to be negotiated. So I just think it's exciting. There's this idea, and exploring and hoping people would talk about all these things somewhere.
There were a lot of comments about the price of what we were offered and the financial strength of the hospital to fund whatever we want to do. But they have the deepest pockets, and they will be required to pay us fair market value, which is no longer what it was 5 years ago. It is now going to be fair market, which is significantly higher. They will also always be the highest bidder because they have the deepest pockets and we're contiguous with them. And finally, in New York City, I worked for a company that bought a whole block except for St. Peter's Church, and they negotiated secretly with St. Peter's Church to make sure when they tore down the entire block, including the church, that they would build a sanctuary for that church. So it is possible to do it and also be guaranteed that it in perpetuity, that you can't be evicted.
I have like a wrap-up type thing, is that what
Perfect, that's what, I was just thinking, but we do have a couple more things we need to talk about.
We have a few more things to talk about today, so I want to make a couple of process observations. First of all, I want to just, I think this is a great time to talk about the roller coaster of change. You've probably heard of this. Gil Rendell is an organizational consultant who talks about this. And basically, when there's something new to consider, it's kind of like a roller coaster. And the people, the leaders who are out in front, they go up and they climb and they climb, and then they get to the top and they can see everything, and then they get to go down and have the ride. Well, everyone that comes behind them has to have the same process, right? You have to climb and you have to see what you can see and then have the experience. And I think one of the mistakes that leaders can make is to feel like, oh, we've done that. We've climbed that hill, and so trust us and come with us. So I think it's important for us to just make space for everyone to get into their little car and go climb up the hill and see the vantage point. And so we'll keep talking about this. So that's one process thing. The other process thing that I want to introduce here is that I think it's time for us to revitalize the teams that we had before. And maybe there are now 3 teams. Stay. And what would that mean? To stay as we are in this space. How could we make that financially sustainable into the future? Go, where would we go? So a team that could, see what's out there, and could we, for the money we would get, buy something that would meet our needs? And then this third option, if we were to form a partnership, so far UCSD is the one that makes the offer, and as Les points out, they have pretty deep pockets. That group could decide to look and see what the viability is of other partners. So I suggest that we very soon after this meeting form those teams. And then we have to trust those teams to gather the information and share it with us. And it's going back to the roller coaster of change. What we have to do, I think the only way through this, and the reason that we did this today, I mean, this is late breaking news, and we are sharing it with you. Some people would say you're unwise to bring such an unformed idea to the congregation. But I actually think you need to know that this is in the beginning stages. And what is the kind of sense of the room? I sense that there's interest in this. Am I hearing that correctly? So we think that we have 3 options now: stay, go, or share. And so we should go forward with that. I will just make this one, I can't help myself, editorial comment. The idea that we would become developers and landlords kind of terrifies me. We're still recovering from the pandemic. Sometimes it's hard to get people to hand out orders of service for worship. To think that we could get people that would, I know we would pay people to do that, but that does worry me when we think about that. Do we really want to be developers and landlords? But maybe we do, and I think we should trust the group that looks at that to come and make their best assessment of what's possible. So that's where we are, and that's the late breaking news. What do you think? And I want to say thank you, Tony, for giving voice to that, out-of-the-box idea.
And now on to more late-breaking news. So I want to tell you about some advancements with the South Bay Task Force. So you may not know, but the South Bay Task Force is comprised of leaders from the South Bay campus, the Food Pantry, and the Hillcrest campus, and I am the clergy and staff support. So this group was charged to try to find a new home for both the South Bay and the pantry. We've been working with a commercial real estate agent to find this new church home. And when I came in, it had been months before we'd seen anything. And by the time of December, it had been 6 months, and we had had nothing to see. The biggest difficulties is that when you're trying to lease or rent a space, it's very hard to find places that are permitted for assembly, meaning people able to gather on Sunday morning, and that you also need a certain number of parking spots to be able to get a conditional use permit for a space that's not built for assembly. So we have repeatedly not been able to find places that are permitted for assembly or that we have enough parking for. So I came December, we gathered back around, we met with our real estate agent, and we decided we wanted to expand the criteria so that we could really get a sense of, are there other possible homes in the South Bay? So we decided to increase the geographic range. So we originally had a kind of small, mostly Chula Vista range that is near where the South Bay campus is now. We expanded that to go east a bit, to go north into National City, to go down to Imperial Beach and down to San Ysidro. We also decided to increase the number of square footage and also be open to see what would it be like to rent or to buy a home for South Bay. We wanted to see if that changed anything. So, want to tell you about an exciting possibility, which is the first thing we've seen in months. So, an exciting possibility was shared on January 16th. That was only about 11 days ago. The steps that we took was we shared that information with the executive team. We went and did a viewing with members of the South Bay Task Force who could do it on the 20th. And then I shared information with South Bay leaders at a South Bay leadership meeting last Sunday. What was really exciting is that everyone who saw the property, everyone who we shared images and things with the property said, oh yes, yes, this is the most promising thing that we have seen in a long time for South Bay. We're sharing this information today because we believe it's a promising location, and we think it would allow both South Bay and the pantry to thrive. So I want to tell you a little bit about 845 Otay Lakes Road. So this location is directly opposite the Southwestern Community College. So if you've ever been to Southwestern, it's at H and Otay Lakes Road, about 8 minutes east of the 805. This building has 3,500 square feet. It is already designed for church use and has a full kitchen. It is in an excellent location directly across from the community college and 2 blocks from a giant high school, Bonita Vista High. It is visible. It is on a road that has 3 lanes in each direction and is right on the road. And it is accessible by public transportation. There is a bus stop in front of the building. It is already zoned for a church and has an existing conditional use permit. There are over 40 parking spots and ample parking on the streets on the weekends. And it has really strong possibilities for social justice partnerships. I wrote here, one of the members of the South Bay Task Force said, this is the most promising permanent home for South Bay we've seen in the last 10 years of looking. So, I want to show you some pictures. This is the front of, I want to make sure I can see what you're seeing. So this is the front of the building. Let's go to the next slide. So if you were to come in the front of the building, this would be what is currently being used as a kind of foyer and reception area. Go to the next slide. This is the main room. This main room would be where the worshiping space and also the social hall would be in the back. We think it could seat about 80 folks in that space. Let's go one more slide. This is the full kitchen, refrigerator, oven, all of those good things. You can see that it's a church because they have a pass-through window, right? So if you go back to the kitchen, kitchens in churches are made, right, so that you can prepare things in the kitchen, pass through for social hour to go into the other space. Let's go to the next. This is the current front office space, and this is the current minister's office. And this is the view from outside. So you can see, kind of get a sense of the size of the building. These next 3 tiers would be parking for the church. One thing to know is it's currently owned by the Church of Latter-day Saints in Chula Vista. So the Church of Latter-day Saints is up the hill. We would have a shared parking agreement that if they ever needed overflow, that on Sundays we would share the parking. We did have our real estate agent go, and there was no one using those spaces the last Sunday. So there's also an additional parking lot that you can't see in this picture that's to the right, which would ours be sole use, two handicap parking spots and 8 additional parking. So it would, right now, the way that it is, it could be, like the church could walk in and open up the church. The pantry would take some further adjustments. We'd have to think about how to modify most likely the office spaces to be used for a pantry. It does have double doors, which is essential for a permit, conditional use permit for the pantry. There's also, we talked about the possibility of, if we were to relocate, could we build additional storage for the pantry? So could we use the site? It is 1.1 acres of property. So there's some possibility also for expanded growth. So, thank you. So what happens next? So there's currently a full price offer on this property. It has not yet gone to contract. They have no backup offers at this time, so that's a little promising. The asking price is $1.5 million. We have done comparables. It is comparable, if not maybe a little bit more affordable than some things that are in that area. We're going to continue to work with the real estate agent to answer any questions we have. Andy French came on the tour and did a full assessment of, right, how old is the boiler? How old is the HVAC system? What does the roof look like, right? So some of those essential things that you need to know about what other care the facility would need. We would work with the board to determine feasibility, like, are we up to owning another piece of property? What would the financing look like? But one thing that you would need to know is that it's a very short timeline. So if this is a property that we want to potentially be in the mix of, we would need to make an offer relatively soon. We do also want to affirm the church cannot buy any piece of property without a 2/3 congregational vote, right? So we would need to approve by 2/3. But that's why we're telling you now. This is the first exciting possibility we've had, and we want to make sure you knew about it. So we're open if folks have questions, knowing we may or may not know the answer. We've been known about this opportunity for about 11 days.
I'm pretty much saying this from a standpoint of a 28-year employee of the city of Chula Vista. So I know this area, but I know it's a much different neighborhood, the neighborhood that the existing church is in. And there's some good things about the existing neighborhood, which is it actually is in more of a working class neighborhood. This is class-wise is much more of a middle class neighborhood. I think the existing area really, I don't know, in my mind, I think it better serves the pantry because you have people who are more how would I say, more financially needy in the existing neighborhood rather than in the proposed neighborhood. It's also, the good thing about the existing neighborhood is it's much more accessible to transit.
Thank you. So I do want to just acknowledge it is a very different neighborhood. This was not in our original scope. We did have members of the South Bay campus go to look at it because it is out of the kind of traditional geographic range. Part of the excitement was the possibility of, there's a tremendous amount of diversity in the student body at Southwestern Community College, both around economics, around race and culture, and so there is possibility of growth, and it would be a different location. Just so that folks know, the difficulty with our current location is we have no access to parking during the week, during the day, or the evenings. So it really limits any use of our church spaces other than Saturday and Sunday, and we do have contested use on some of those days. So it's really meant, we pay $7,000 a month to use facilities that we only have access to on Saturdays and Sundays. So just so folks have a sense of, and we have focused our search initially on the west side of Chula Vista.
That was my question. How much are we paying in rent now?
About $7,000.
Okay, so I can solve the problem of how to get financing.
Okay. Follow up with Carolyn.
Are you saying that you'd finance it? Ooh, wow.
Martha, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to come up?
No, it's a question, okay.
We've got another microphone.
What? Oh, yeah, I'm
Do you
gonna get to
want
it.
to also person this?
Someone else asked.
The full price offer is a wet blanket because, of course, it might not even fall to us. Is there any reason for us to believe that we will have a chance at this property?
So before I was going to present this to all of you, I called the real estate agent and I said, I know there's this offer. They said that they're moving forward. The current congregation is moving forward. But as we all know, right, they're not under contract and they have not closed it. And so they said they would absolutely entertain a backup offer. They would absolutely entertain an offer that's slightly higher. And so there's nothing that has been moved beyond basically a verbal agreement between the group that has made the offer and the church.
I was thinking about all of this years ago when we first moved into where the South Bay is now. Reverend Kathleen was asking, well, what do you think? She asked me, and I said, you know what? Go big or go home. And, I really feel, I'm at the South Bay, I'm there for the pantry once a week. I encounter all of these same issues that we've already discussed, and it's time to go big or go home. We got to go.
I think one of the exciting things about this is when we go back to our values earlier and some of the reasons we talked about staying or going here, is we always look at here is supposed to meet all the needs, meaning diverse communities. If we had a bigger other that's part of us, that we're one, that might address some of that value. And I think this community college is one of the most diverse places you can find, and young people usually.
That's just about what I was going to say. I think that this huge pool of young people of diverse range across the street and transit both just speak to the values that we clearly identified in the first exercise. I think it's a winner.
Yeah. Can we have an off-site pantry to keep a presence in where we're most needed for pantry patients? I'm not sure about, unless we have a van that brings them back and forth. I don't know their accessibility options they have or transit, but that's my concern, that we maintain either off-site, find a place that can have the pantry in a different location.
Yeah, so I mean, that's certainly something to consider. I would also just say that Southwestern Community College runs a pantry. What would it be like to have a joint pantry or to collaborate with one another, that instead of us having to run the whole thing, us being able to really partner? The week that I was there, Southwestern Community College was holding the first powwow with all of the indigenous communities of San Diego, and I was thinking, what if we were part of that? What would if we were able to really partner? I think there's a tremendous amount of possibility there. So yeah. I think we need to wrap this up. So maybe one last question. Fabulous.
Yeah, my question is how the move would affect our current pantry clients and their access to the pantry, and what we could potentially do to mitigate any negative effect.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is probably the biggest concern, and so we wouldn't move forward unless we could address that. So. Okay, great. Susan, please.
I have no idea what $7,000 a month to buy the place would buy. Is that enough money? How much would we need for?
Yeah, so that's one of the things is the initial feasibility. Are you okay with, so my sense is that currently the $7,000 is the rent for the 4 suites that we have. Our estimate is that to finance a $1.6 million mortgage would be about $8,000 a month. So. That's the initial numbers, but we haven't gone deep, so I didn't want to put that in the presentation. So, thank you so much for entertaining this possibility, and would love to talk to you more.
2 minutes or less. All right, folks, Article 2 in 2 minutes or less. So, a brief history, that's the next slide. The commission convened in 2022. They took about a year to sort of understand their charge and talk amongst themselves. 2021, 45 feedback sessions in person with over 4,000 people participating. Over 7,000 people watched the videos, and 29 surveys went out with over 10,000 people responding. I put that up there because I know we were not necessarily in a place at First UU where we were paying attention to that in that year, but it happened, right? And so the fact that we were maybe a little unaware that there was all this input happening doesn't mean that it didn't happen. 2023 GA, after the Article 2 had been proposed, there were 90 amendments that were proposed. 15 of those were prioritized for discussion at GA, and of that, 5 passed the vote to be incorporated into what is now the revised Article 2. So that brings us up to today. So as of today, you can find the most recent version of Article 2 online. If you do a quick search for UUA Article 2, it'll take you right to it on Google. We also did an adult RE just last night, and the video will be up on our YouTube page where we read the whole thing together. So if you just want to sort of hear me read it, you can watch that video. Amendments, so that we're now in the next round of amendment process. So these amendments have sort of a higher bar to get in. Any new amendments are due on February 1st by 11:59. Eastern time. To my knowledge, we are not part of that process as First UU. Amendments have to have a primary congregational sponsor, and each congregation can only be the primary sponsor on one amendment. And in addition to that, any amendment has to have 15 other congregations who are supporting that amendment. So you need 15 total with a primary sponsor to make an amendment sort of now. And they're due this week. What happens now? So this year, we'll have some more discussion. I know I will plan to have some more RE sessions about Article 2, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in other spaces. And then at 2024 GA, we vote. So keep your eyes out for the stuff we're doing this year to talk about that, and be prepared for 2024. We'll vote on Article 2. Did I do it?
You did it. We saved the best for last, Sue.
There you go. Thank you. Hi, I'm glad I didn't have to follow the really exciting news. I just want to do a very, very brief summary of where we are financially now, what it looks like we're going to be, where we're going to be, and some things that are coming up. If you look at the handout that you got, and it's not on the screen because it would have been too small. Oh, it is, but it's still small. So I'm glad you have the handout. We're about 58,000, 59,000 ahead of where we thought we were going to be at this point. And in our annual forecast, the next to the last column, you can see that we're about planning that at the end of June, we should be about $50,000 ahead of where we budgeted in income. This is totally talking about just our operating income. On the expense side of things, we are under by $81,000 to date, and we still plan to be pretty far under in the spring. We are looking at probably spending some more money in the spring. Some of our expenses are going up, but we still plan, at this point, our forecast is that we will end the year with $119,000 in the positive that we'll be able to put into the general fund surplus. It's really good. December was a very good month. We got some monies in. People paid their pledges that had not been paid. You know, we started out feeling we were under budget, and suddenly we were way over. So it was very good news. On the reserve funds, I just listed a few of the things that I thought you would be most interested in. The general fund is up to $473,000. We will be using some of that in the fall. Now, this is not operating. This is general reserve funds. We already spent in January the $25,000 that was left in the emergency funds. So we do need to replenish emergency funds. We are currently at a negative balance in the maintenance reserve, and we have maintenance work to be done, so there will be money spent there. We got everybody on the staff up to the UUA levels. We had thought that some of those people might have to take their increases over a 2-year period, but we got everybody up to, in November, we got them up. So that means higher payroll costs in the spring than we had for most of the first half of the year. The Renewal and Growth Fund is still at almost $2 million, which is where we started. That includes a $500,000 matching fund if we choose to have a capital campaign to pay down our mortgage, which we all kind of feel is a very good idea. But we don't know if the congregation is ready for that at this point. I hope we are. We're going to have to pay down the mortgage whether we do it now or later. So better, in my opinion, to do it soon. And then there's money for the outreach and growth events that keep coming up every month. And there's money for some staffing, special staffing for special purposes. The food pantry has $93,000 currently, this is end of December, in the bank. That's what's paying the rent. It pays for some of the food that has to be purchased. It pays for probably some other expenses that I'm not thinking about. The endowments are up, and we got some extra money. I believe that's supposed to be $90,000 that we got in December. And I said 70, but I think that was just one of them. And then we moved money to make it more secure into the Neighborhood National Bank in Chula Vista. This is a bank that has arrangements with other banks so that, you know how the Federal Reserve only guarantees $250,000? Well, we have way more than that. So moving money into Neighborhood Bank, they have deals with other banks to, when the balances go above $250,000, they move it to somewhere else. So we have many accounts all under one umbrella. A neighborhood bank tracks all of that, but each bank only has up to $250,000. So our funds are much more secure. And it is a socially responsible bank, and it's in Chula Vista, so there were all kinds of reasons for going there. And the last thing, now this was exciting news that we just got, as if there weren't enough exciting news. We applied sometime back, actually a year or two back, for employee retention tax credit, the ERTC funds. There was, the payroll protection plan gave us money back for keeping our employees during the pandemic. The tax credit, this employee retention, was for keeping them after the period of the PPP. So the fact that we did not lay off people once the government was not paying for their salaries gave us a tax credit of $173,000. We don't know when that's going to come. It could be years from now, it could be just months from now, we don't know. But it is going to come. We got the notice from the IRS. And so we have the question of how will we use those funds? That is another big congregational question when it comes in. There are all kinds of possibilities. So that is my good news for the day.
So last but not least, I'd like to call everybody's attention to one of the handouts you got when you came in. It's the white paper with proposed constitutional amendments. Unfortunately, because of a timing issue as far as analysis is concerned, we're not going to be voting on the amendments today. There will be an online vote opened. Robbie, what's the date for that? February 18th is when it opens? Okay. So there will be an online vote opened, but we're still going to take the opportunity today to talk about the amendments and what they mean and why we're doing it. So one of the things that came up during the pandemic is the person who does our audits wasn't available, and we weren't able to do an audit in 2020 because of the pandemic shutdown. However, in the Constitution, we are required to do an audit every single year. So the board discussed this, and also we met with our accounting people and our auditors, and according to our accounting practices, it is not necessary to have an audit every single year. And it's also, but the Constitution does require us to do so. So the amendments that are proposed are that currently the first paragraph that we're looking at would be amended so that it's not requiring the audit report to be presented at every annual meeting, but if there is an audit required for that year, that it would be presented at the annual meeting for that year. The second paragraph, the bottom one, changes how frequently we have an audit from every year to at least every 2 years. So those are the two changes that were proposed to the Constitution in order to make the audit process more feasible. And again, like we said, we've consulted with professionals who have found our accounting practices sound. They felt that, from what I've been told, the auditing process every year was not necessary, but it would still be good practice to have at least every 2 years for an audit. So, Sue, was there anything you wanted to add to that, or did I get that correctly? Okay. So those are the reasons why we have the amendments to the Constitution. So, yeah, we're going to open the floor to questions. Go ahead.
And as I'm walking, I'll just say that the way that this came up is that we couldn't do an audit in 2020 because of the pandemic. We weren't able to get it done. And when it happened after 2 years, there were no more errors than after 1 year. So we thought, gee, maybe we don't need to have this at the same frequency.
So I approve of every other year. The only thing is the way it's written in the section 1, the sentence now would read, and I'm going to read it just as printed. Voting members will receive the audit or review. If required, will be presented the annual budget for approval and will elect. And so that doesn't make sense. So after required, I suggest the word and will be presented with the annual budget for approval and will elect it. Yeah.
That's a friendly amendment that I don't think our presenters would object to.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I should be speaking, but when I was last active on the Finance Committee, there was the concept that even if there was not an outside audit, that there would be an internal audit of the various accounts. And that's not provided for here at all. And what I'm trying to say is you would have an outside audit periodically, not necessarily every year, but you would have a group that would review the accounts of the congregation in the interim.
And I'll just say one thing that we haven't talked about, but every single month, our director of operations and our treasurer go through all the finances and then presents that to the finance committee, right. And then that's presented to the board every month. So there really are reviews ongoingly.
Right.
It's my understanding that there's a government study group going through this, and there are policies that allow us to adjust that, and the board can make changes in the policies.
The policies are dictated by the Constitution. The Constitution is the higher authority. So we need to change the higher authority in order for us to do the policy. That's why we're doing the amendment.
Wait, why?
Because otherwise the amendment requires us to do it every year.
Our Constitution doesn't change very often. There are legislators who do all of the changes that, and if it needs to be fixed there, then they have to do it.
Right, and I understand what you're saying, but in order for us to change the policy, we need to have constitutional authority to do that. And the way the Constitution is currently set, we are required to have an audit every year. That's the way it is. And so...
An audit or review.
Right. No, it's an audit every year. So, but we need to have, but we need to have the in order to change what we're trying to change, the Constitution needs to change. It's not enough to do a policy.
Cora, and then Kathleen.
So this might be redundant, but basically the policies have to be in accordance with the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
The board can change policies, but they have to be in accordance with the Constitution. That's the ultimate authority.
Right.
In agreement with what's been said, the board can make the policy as said, but they can define what a review is. And in support of the person earlier was talking about internal reviews, we have over 24 financial management policies. They can be substitute in the years between your external review. There's a whole all kinds of options for the board and the audit committee to establish a multi-year schedule for doing our audits. We haven't even had an external audit since 2015 by a CPA, and our budget is close to $2 million now. And it's not good governance practice to retreat from doing annual reviews or an audit. But there is the option of a review annually, and the audit committee can work those out amongst all of our finance policies.
Okay. There's another
Right,
comment
we
over
can
there.
certainly exceed what the Constitution requires, but we can't do less than it requires without changing it. Our interpreter needs a break. And so I'm going to suggest that we close this now. We've been at this for a couple of hours. Come to the finance meeting if you want to talk about finances more. We will certainly have another one of these. We've been doing a January and a June. Maybe we need a March meeting. What do people think? Should we gather in March? And certainly we're going to need to talk about the Stego or share. So we're going to continue to talk, okay? We're going to continue to talk and listen and learn, and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I think...
Every little thing is
and I
going to
appreciate,
be all right.
And I appreciate the differing opinions, which is what this forum is for. And I think we can come to a decision and allow everybody to be heard and just weigh our decisions based on the different points of view that are presented. So I want to thank everybody for being here.
Yep. And can I just say one last
Yeah,
thing?
go ahead.
We will schedule another conversation before the February 18th vote, okay?
Yeah.
Specifically on these constitutional amendments. So there'll be a chance to talk about this more, but I don't want to hold us any longer.
But I do want to remind everybody that there are ways for you all to talk amongst yourselves, including we have a Facebook page, you all have phone numbers and email addresses for each other. So please discuss this among yourselves and have, that way you can get different points of view. So. What was that? It's $5,000 a year? Is it more than that?
I'm sorry, for the internal review, we pay $5,000. For an external audit, it would be many thousands of dollars. And so part of it comes down to what's the cost-benefit analysis? So that's the conversation that we can continue to have. How do we decide, and what might we learn from an audit versus what would it cost us? Thank you, Carolyn, for raising that.
So in closing, I'd like to say, this circle remains open, yet unbroken. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Blessed be.